State. We're here with Keith Whitfield, the Provost of Wayne State University, and I'm here side by side with my co-host, Ruben Maya. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. All right. How about you begin by telling us something about yourself, Provost Keith Whitfield?
So let me tell you about myself. I'm actually Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs for Wayne State University. I'm also a professor in psychology. My background is, my PhD is in lifespan development from Texas Tech University, and most of my research is focused over the years on health, cognition, health disparities in African Americans using both twin models, family models, and studying individuals.
Cool. And we would like to remind today that today is a special day because today is the season's finale of our show. And we just want to thank you again for making time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Today we'll be accepting text-ins. So if anyone has any questions for the Provost or ourselves, you can text in to 248-704-1881. That number again is 248-704-1881.
So I guess the first thing that we want to really get through is the fact that you've kind of got two different things going on at once. You're the Provost, which is more on the administrative end, and you're a researcher. So how do you find balance between those two things?
It makes for very long days. Both of them require a lot. But, you know, I keep the research going just simply because it's one of my passions. I do have a passion for student success and faculty success. Those are things that have driven me through my whole career. But the research pieces of it, it's just great to kind of ask questions and then figure out systematically how you try to answer them. Ultimately, hopefully someday even being able to contribute to improving the lives of people. So both of the pieces actually share that, is that, you know, with student success and faculty success, you really do try to improve the lives of people, provide what they need, help guide them, provide opportunities, lead conversations. And then research, you hope that ultimately it can produce something that actually could help people as well. So they share that in common.
And you're currently doing research right now, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm currently doing research. Actually, I was very disappointed. I think I only have 4 publications for the year. Back in the day when I was a full-time faculty member, I used to get 10 a year, and half the year's gone, and I don't know how many more I'm going to get this year, so I feel like I'm off track. But the research project that I'm currently engaged in is one that's funded by the National Institute on Aging. It's to study stress and longevity in African American families.
Mm-hmm. And what have you found so far in your research?
So in the research over the last 30 years, or the research on this project's still brand new. It's only about 2 years old now.
Okay.
We're in the field collecting data. Very interestingly, we're looking at short-lived and long-lived families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you tend to find is that people who live very long in their family, they actually are also expected to live long lives. And also the converse is true to some extent, too, that people that have folks that actually, like my family, does not have a long bloodline, so I'm going to live hard and fast while I can. You know, I think the oldest person lived to like 85, and so the question is why? You know, why might those differences be within families? And that's what some of the research addresses. The research over time has looked at individual differences in aging. Why does one person seem to age really well and another person doesn't? And so I look at biological factors, I look at social factors, I look at contextual factors, I look at psychological factors, and put them all together and look at different aspects as to why people age well, and even age a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And what got you into this?
What got me into this? That's an interesting question. I was just writing a letter of reference for somebody, and it was for a student research program. And the thing that I cite all the time is that when I was a freshman, I was invited to be a minority biomedical research assistant. And if it hadn't been for that, I really don't know where I'd been. It was such an exciting, I mean, we worked on weekends as a freshman, on Saturday morning, working on weekends cleaning out mouse cages. I actually used to do animal research. That's how I started. And it was looking at genetically defined strains of mice and looking at differences between things we could do in terms of stressing them and different mothering effects, and looking to see actually that even when you looked at the genes had an effect, but also those environmental things like who your mother was or how good a mother she was, and whether we stressed you actually had an impact on learning, and that's what I did. So that was always very, very interesting. When I got into graduate school, I was really very, very broad. I was a developmental psychobiology major, which basically means everything. Anything you can put in the pot, you study. And it was actually with the passing of my grandfather that started to focus me. I was so curious about him. He had died from, acute myocardial infarction. He died overnight. And there was no telltale signs of it. He was, he was a big guy, but, always very sharp, just nothing that you felt like really told you that was going to happen. So I think it was a very traumatic sort of situation. But I also thought about how he had a sixth grade education, but I thought he was like one of the smartest people in the world. And I can even remember when I was in seventh grade, I was like, oh, he's only got a sixth grade education, so I'm smarter than him now. So I went up and said some stupid thing, trying to kind of challenge him, and he just dusted me. I mean, he was just such a smart guy, and that really got me into kind of how the aging mind kind of works and what are the things that happen early in our lives and what can change them, what sometimes doesn't change them, and what contributes to us being then who we are. But the bigger portfolio is really looking at why people are different from one another. And so with that, I actually take two different approaches. Never doing anything easy, always trying to do it hard. But one is looking at individuals and saying, hey, does health, does education, does marital status, does the income you make, do those kinds of things actually influence, say, cognitive functioning? On the other side of the research program are twin and family studies. Twin studies allow you to kind of control the early environmental things to some degree and to say, yeah, you lived in the same family, so there's some similarity there, and you share some genetics at least, so there's some similarity there. And then there's the things that even kids in the same family are sometimes very different from one another. So what is it are those kinds of things, or what proportion anyway of those kinds of things that actually then make us who we are? And so I use an approach called quantitative genetics, where you divide genetic, shared environmental influences, and unique environmental influences. And each one of those sum together for 100% of the variability as you look across lots of people. And twins are the best way to do it, just because identical twins share 100% of their segregating genes, and fraternal twins share on average about half. So you compare the two different kinds with a little statistical model. We were just talking about statistics at 8 o'clock in the morning. I never do those kinds of analyses early in the morning. It's got to wait till later in the day so you can try to figure them out. But so it's a very different kind of approach than individuals, gives you different kinds of results. You even kind of statistically approach it slightly different. But all of it is trying to account for why people are so different from one another, and that's what's interesting.
And when you're studying like twins, what do you think creates the personality of a person? Do you think it's more of the environmental factor, or do you think it's encoded in their genes? Who makes up what makes up a personality in a person?
So the answer to that, of course, is yes. It's typically always some of both. Far too often, and historically, what we've done is people have taken an approach where they've thought it's genes or it's environment, it's nature or it's nurture. It's never one or the other. It's usually some of both. And actually, where a lot of the science is going, and if I wasn't a provost, I'd probably be trying to chase after this way of being able to get at it, is that what's not only the genetic contributors and the environmental contributors, it's then the gene and environmental interactions that happen. If you are in a certain kind of place with a certain kind of genotype, does it actually affect behavior? Does it affect health? Does it affect organs? What kinds of things actually does it affect? The kind of technology that's just exploding. We have a lot of researchers actually here at Wayne State who do this kind of research. It's exciting to see, because what it does is it stops from us from thinking about these very, very simple models which really don't explain very much, and really say, yeah, life and health and the way our brains work, the way our bodies work, is a very, very complex interaction of different things that you have to understand all of them if you're going to help a person and if you're going to understand a person.
And one of those environmental factors that you've talked about quite a bit has been stress. It's one of those things that, like, everyone seems to know what it is, but what would you say a definition of it is?
Ooh, I didn't know there was going to be a test today. Stress is fascinating. I think about stress. I think about things that are actually perceived as basically threats from the environment, either threats to your well-being, threats to your health, threats to your safety. And the biggest piece of it, because, boy, that was a weak answer to your question, but I'd say the thing that I try to get to is to think, so we know what it is, but how do we learn it? I mean, do we just come into this world knowing stress? Probably not. It's that we go through events and it's shaped in part by the people around us. It's shaped sometimes by the outcomes of certain things happening, of that we actually learn stress. So if you learn stress, it's interesting. I've been telling you all about the aging stuff that I do. I actually also used to do, very few people know this. I'm going to hide my CV so nobody sees it, but I also used to do relaxation training so that people could actually learn how not to stress. And you can learn how not to stress. You can do it through things like diaphragmatic breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. All of these things can actually be taught to you. If you catch me rolling down the hallway and I'm kind of, half got my eyes closed and you see me just breathing, it's because I'm stressed about something. And I know how not to get stressed anymore. I've learned how not to be stressed. So I think that you can both learn how to be stressed and also learn how not to be stressed.
Well, I was just going to say, when we were talking before the show in your office, you said how human beings learn how to, what stress means or what stress is. So I was thinking that maybe we learn what fear is, and that kind of dictates what kind of stress level you're going to be at. So I think fear comes before stress.
Fear comes before stress. There's a lot of arguments about whether we learn fear or not. That there are certain things, like for babies, you can put them at the kind of the edge of a cliff, and they're visual cliffs. They're not, they're not real cliffs. Not pushing babies off the edge, but where babies will look and see, and they'll see that, hey, there's a drop off here, and they'll sit back. Now, are they perceiving stress, or are they just saying, oh, that'd be a bad thing, because that interpretation is what I think is discussed and kind of argued back and forth on. But you can see babies, very, very young babies, who will not go over the edge. Now, there are some babies, I think it's even younger, they're just kind of, hey, and they'll just go over the cliff. But at some point in time, they kind of understand and think about the world, and that's an argument for learning the fear piece of it. But there's, it's so interesting. You're having me do my little review. I think about some of the psychological principles of thinking about whether we come into this world really knowing anything, whether we're just tabula rasas with these blank slates, or do we come in with some pre-programming? Some of the folks who really believe in the strength of genetics will say, yeah, you come in with certain predispositions. You come in maybe with even predispositions to seek out certain kinds of environments. Robert Plomin used to talk about this all the time. He used to get lambasted for it because people didn't want to think that way. But, it is possible. Our genes do hold some of those behavioral proclivities that might lead us to one way or another. Whether you can really find them out or not, I'm on the fence about that. I think that so much of what we do is from learning. It's from learning social environments, the context we live in, the friends we have. It's hard to be an eagle when you soar with turkeys, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what makes up a lot of it. And that those genes, yes, they can push us and they can pull us certain ways. But a lot of things that we learn sometimes may be in conflict with them, may exacerbate them, may grow other things. It's always the two sides of that puzzle. Definitely two pieces of it, and the real interesting part is when you see the places where they actually interact and work together.
In your research at all, do you look at all into how ancient humans lived, or like people who lived in tribes, people who lived in, maybe even isolated tribes who have no contact with outside culture that share similarities with, things that we still fear and stress about?
Well, it's interesting. No, I don't. Those are our colleagues in anthropology, which I always find fascinating. I love to go to talks by anthropologists, and we have some great ones here at Wayne State. They just had this business anthropology workshop that was global, and they talked about the different ways in which people think about cultures and contexts and history in business, and it's just fascinating stuff. No, I haven't done that, but I'll tell you a very, very quick story. When I was a freshman in college, Altered States came out. And it's this old movie. Anybody listening should go dig it up. You got to dig it up. And it was the idea that somehow we had certain, maybe in our genetic code, I can't remember the movie exactly, but we really had these old, ancient ways in which, primordial man or ancient man actually was still in us today. And that this guy in the movie, he takes mushrooms and somehow that releases them, and he's seeing stuff and tripping out. I mean, it's a fascinating movie. the thing I got harassed about when I was a freshman is I was just taking intro psychology, and I was saying, okay, no, that's Jungian. Oh, no, that's Freudian. Oh, this is fascinating. People are like, shut up. We're trying to listen to the movie. So none of that. Now, I will tell you the one experience that I did have that kind of relates to that is that while, most of my program research looks at African Americans, compares racial differences and things, I do have a piece of my research where it's been international. And one of them is that I was an investigator, the lead investigator on a study of Russian twins. Now, Russian is interesting because when I went back in 1994. The wall had just fallen, communists had just fallen in Russia. And so what you would think is that there would be no environmental influences in some ways because there's no variability. Everybody had the same environment. You'd find these giant genetic influences. Well, not so much so. Even in things like, I think one of my papers is on forced expiratory volume. This is lung function, it's a health kind of measure. And you would think, yeah, you should find big genetic influences, been found that way in Swedes and others. But you actually found that it was attenuated a bit. And so it's like, well, so no, why is environment even there? It's not supposed to be there. And I think it's that some of our beliefs about what communism was really like from our perspective here, it wasn't true. There was still variability. There was still people that, did better and people who did worse. Even under communism, which is a socialist view that everything's going to be equal and for the people and all of that. My work started kind of looking at that, and in my mind, I was like, well, maybe not so much so. That social contexts, even ones with these political constraints to them, still have a lot of variability. What was fascinating was being there. What you saw was taking communism off the table. Oh my goodness! I mean. There was, you truly saw a great range of variability in terms of kind of wealth and poverty and opportunity and people not having opportunity. It was a bit of who you knew, it was what you knew, it was what systems you knew how to get around or what ones you didn't get around. All of that, when we were then looking at the comparison of these twins actually started playing into it. So it was a really interesting, kind of off the beaten path sort of experiment to do. That I thought was fascinating. So shout out to all of my Russian colleagues who worked with me on that study.
That's pretty cool.
Did you live there for extended periods of time?
I didn't live there. I was there for 2 weeks. And it was fascinating. My colleagues were like, you're only going to be here for 2 weeks. We were trying to figure out where we were going to try to really do something really, really big. And it was difficult because the environment was changing so much there. But I did stay there for 2 weeks, and rather than staying, in downtown Moscow, right near Moscow University, I stayed out at a flat, and I would have to take the subway in. And just truly being in the mix. If you're going to study something, I think this is what our sociologists and anthropologists do. You have to live with folks. You have to really think about the people that you're studying. And so that was a fantastic piece of it. The funniest piece of it, and it was funny to me, was that, back in the day, back in James Bond in the 60s, there used to be these stereotypical evildoer cars that were the Russian cars. They were gray, and I don't even know what they're called, but they were just this car. And so as I'm working, one of the days they had a driver come get me. And I walk out of the flat that I'm staying in, and I look, and he's standing next to this car, and I just start cracking up. And he goes, oh, are you laughing at my car? I said, no, I think your car's like the coolest thing in the world. I can't believe I'm in the classic Russian car. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a car guy, so that just went along with it, but it was just so cool to see. That wasn't a movie prop. Those are actually their cars.
Right.
It was neat.
Was it a Yugo? I'm just kidding.
It's not a Yugo. It's got a name for it. I can't remember the name for it. And it kind of has little baby fins on the back. They're kind of small. They're like a small mid-sized car. They have 4 doors to them, but they're this battleship gray. And it was like nothing fancy, battleship gray, just straightforward. It was just so cool. The guy was so nice. Took me all over. I saw Lenin's grave. I saw some churches. I just got to ride around in the city, but every time I'd come back to the car, I'd just start laughing because I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Is it the ones that are like real boxy?
And they're real, yeah.
They've
yeah.
looked the same for 40 years.
There's not much
Is it this one maybe?
Yes,
That's the one?
one.
All right,
That's
for
the
our
one.
listeners, it's a GAZ-21. That's the model.
If anyone's in the market.
Pick one up for a steal.
So I have a very important question. For when I was telling people that you were going to come here to our show, most people don't really know what the provost oversees in the university. I don't know if you get that a lot. I'll admit, even myself, like I didn't know until like probably my junior or senior year of college. I just know that we get all these emails from the provost.
Ooh, all these things.
So, so I was wondering, is there a difference between the provost and the vice president at like universities?
Yeah, there can be. I'm actually a vice president as well. I'm a senior vice president for academic affairs. You know, they're titles. In terms of the function of what you do is different. Vice presidents, you know, they actually, the ones here work very, very hard, and they have pretty significant portfolios. The provost portfolio tends to be a little bigger. You know, my first job task is always to do whatever the president wants me to do, and then beyond then, everything that's academic reports to me. Here at Wayne State, we actually have a very interesting system because not only does the academic pieces, but also student affairs for the most part. Some place, it just depends on how it's structured, but some places have a vice president for student affairs. Here we don't, and so because I think the way that the president really wants to see the culture here, he wants to see one that is, of course, a research one, Carnegie community engaged place, but also a place that really cares about student affairs. And so I think to do that, and I think it just works well here, what we do is we have student affairs, so the dean of students, housing, and a few other things, even the bookstore and other things that are around student life actually report up to me. Now, what that means is that I have a bunch of direct reports. I mean, I have some centers that are overseen by the provost office, but it's all the deans of the 13 schools and colleges. Then it's my staff, where there's about 12 or 13. Then there's, you know, a couple others here in centers. I mean, it comes out to like 35 people that are direct reports, and then you got to meet with everybody else. So I try to be involved in everything. This is a massive university. I mean, it's 27,000 students, 2,600 faculty and staff. It's really, really big. And so it's great. Actually, I like getting out a little bit, too. The president really says, you know, don't sit behind the door and, you know, people, you know, come into this secret place that's called the provost office. I want to see you out there and really talking to people. We want to make sure that people really feel like we're here for them, we're listening to them. And so unlike a lot of provosts at some places that they really don't. They don't go anywhere. I go everywhere. I get a chance to go everywhere. I go into the community and do things. I'm on a couple of boards for things. I get to do a lot of really, really exciting things.
Like being here on the show today.
Like being, you know, if you hang around long enough, you can get on the show. You know, you have to have enough pull faculty members out there.
Very prestigious. Show. Yeah.
You know, you get a gold star. You know, special water. It's very exciting.
That's fine. Your office was actually pretty cool. I was very impressed by how nice it looks.
Well, you know, if you got to live there like I do, it's nice to have a few little accoutrements. But I need to get like a refrigerator and maybe you know a hot plate, and then I'll never have to go home. I can just stay here the whole time.
Right.
What is neat is that I was just talking to a student today, and we started off talking about research, and I hope, as you can hear, I love my research. I love science, but I love my research. I love answering the questions that I've been asking for years and trying to build and see if I learn and understand more. It's one of my passions, and I try to do that with all my graduate students, with the postdocs that I work with, is to say, you know, all of this stuff is kind of academic if you don't really care about it. You know, you can sit in a laboratory and, you know, click off this one and, you know, do PCR and put things in a test tube. Anybody can do that, but if it's something that you really, really love, it's great. It's like you never work a day in your life. I am just so blessed of that. I have two halves of that. I dare I say this, and hopefully the president's not listening. I love being provost. I mean, it is really a cool gig. I love being able to work with the really smart deans that we have. That they're trying to keep up with all of the trends that are going on, trying to figure out how we can make life better for our students, how we can make sure that our faculty are successful and give them what they need. That's like really cool stuff. So, you know, I have a good time. That and being in the city of Detroit. I mean, my family is from the Midwest, so I've always kind of identified as being kind of a Midwesterner, even though I moved all around as a kid. So this feels so similar to me. And because I was on the Institute for Gerontology's advisory board starting in like 1997, up until I got here, and then they kicked me off. You know, I was coming here for like 18 years, 19 years, something like that. And I've seen the transformation that's happened. And actually, when I was interviewing for the job here, I was like, you know, you can see Detroit is actually going to make it back this time. There's like this foundation that seems different from when it's had spits and sputters in the past. And so then to be here, to be at, you know, Wayne State University, Detroit's university, you know, even in the time here, I'm here for the sesquicentennial for 150 years. It's like, what did I do to have it this good? So, and then being able to be on the show, I think, is just the cap. I think after that, I'll just, you know, say my goodbyes and wave to the crowd as I go. Why? Because I don't think life can get any better. But I'm having a good time.
So one of the things you mentioned is making student lives better. What is the time frame that, like the time scale that you try to do that on, or your focus is on? Is it while they're at the university or for a lifetime?
It has to be both. You know, you all as students, you all just don't understand. And it's interesting when you think I'm a lifespan development, so I have to think about it. I'm like, you know, it is interesting of that, you know, people like me. I mean, I went to college in the early 80s. And to think about how we thought about college then, it really was this, you do your degree and then you launch into the world. Well, for you all, you do your degree and you're constantly still learning. I mean, heck, if you just change your phone every couple of years, you've got to learn there's just constant learning that has to go on. It's there in online, it's there in every different media that we have, it's there through video, it's there through internet radio. There's just so much to continue learning. So I think we have tried here to really make sure that we focus on lifelong learning. These are skills that you need. I mean, we just redid the gen ed reform, and part of the driving force behind that is to make sure that we're building skills in students that they will have to use for a lifetime. It is not just a degree and you're done. Life is not like that anymore. Don't ever fool yourself. You should stay engaged. It will make your life better. It will make it more interesting. It will give your career more satisfaction. It'll probably allow you to do better in your career. That's just the way our lives now are in the information age. So, you know, it's so interesting. You talked about the time frame, and I had a meeting earlier today with a freshman who's in one of our superstar programs, the Wayne Med Direct program. This takes high school students and basically says, you know, you're a superstar student, you're pointed towards going to medical school, let's help you get there. So we have 2 cohorts of them. A third one's going to be coming in this fall. This is a program that the president started to really say, you know, I know that there are these superstar students out there. Let's try to help them by putting them on a pathway very early on. So, you know, some stuff happens as early as your freshman year. You guys may know or feel like, you know, sometimes I used to always think it's your junior year. The first year, you're like, holy crap, I don't know where everything is. I don't know what I'm doing. Second year, you're like, I think I do. And third year, you're like, okay, yeah, I know what's going on here. Guess what? Then after your third year, you got to be thinking, okay, now I got to get ready to get out. And, you know, at Wayne State University, students, this is not a simple, you know, 4-year traditional kind of university. We're a university that has people that work part-time, that work full-time, people coming back to school after years and years of being out. I mean, that's what makes it actually a cool place. So even saying the traditional freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, I mean, it's not constrained in any kind of way. I think that what we hope is that no matter what classes you're taking, we built up the number of advisors here a few years ago, and I think that they are doing maybe some of the most important work is that they point students towards the classes that our faculty are teaching that really match with what their interests are, the straightest way in terms of getting done. But at the same time, there's value in each one of those classes, and really understand those advisors. That's not an easy thing to do, with 350 degree programs. I mean, there's so many opportunities here. You then kind of have to try to tailor to who that individual is. But, I think that what I've seen a couple of them be able to do here is that they do try to do the same thing like I do. I mean, that I have my passion. I had a person that really, he wanted me to be very different, but, I was just interested in aging. He wanted me interested in early environmental stuff. And I said, the early environmental stuff results in what happens to you later on. So I want to know what goes on there. But it's trying to do that. It's trying to make sure that you understand what the student's passion is and figure out what's the quickest and easiest way for them to get there, but also what's the way that's going to add value, that's going to add meaning to what they do and get excited about things. Life is fun when you're doing something exciting. I mean, if you've ever been in one of those jobs where it's just, press this widget and do this, and you do it 1,000 times, maybe that's what you like to do, but I think for most people, they think, this is just a job I do because it's a job. There's a difference between jobs and careers, and that's what we try to do, is we try to build situations where students can have careers. Those careers last a lifetime, the learning is constant, and this is where we think a lot of it begins.
And with the universities doing less over doing more for the students, is one of the university's roles to put students in really difficult situations, or maybe not hold their hand through certain difficulties?
Well, no, we never try to make things too hard. No. This is something it's a very interesting concept that you raise. And that is sometimes, faculty struggle with, they really want to make it challenging because they know you'll actually learn from it being challenging. But you don't want to make it so hard that nobody gets a grade, because, see, there's the two pieces there. There's actually what you do and what you gain from it, and then we have to care about how you're evaluated and what you do, because that grade ends up meaning a lot. And so that's something, don't think that professors have it easy. They think long and hard about how they can do both. I just met somebody, I want to say that she's in the anthropology department, that is working on trying to make learning, like we were just talking about video games. It's gaming. But what you do is that you actually go through a game process and think about it. People don't sometimes think about when you're playing like, Mortal Kombat or shows how many video games I play.
Fatality. You learn a lot from that game.
Call of Duty,
Yeah.
When you do those things, you do learn a lot, okay? You learn to pay attention to certain things, so your attention is up. You learn to identify and differentiate things. You learn how to try to process kind of serially. You learn strategy. There's things in gaming that you can bring to things like learning about social conditions and social situations, or how you actually, put together pieces of pictures. I think about this relative to the digital humanities. I've seen people where they've taught it in a gaming style, so that, you get, and you kind of think that it's a game, and by the end, you realize how many skills you've actually been able to develop. That's, like I said, I wish I could remember the faculty's member's name. I apologize if you can hear me.
That's amazing. That's a really cool concept.
And look across our faculty. They're trying. What I love is that they not only bring passion. We talked about passion in research. They bring passion to teaching as well. And so they're not just using a video in class, but they're using videos. They're using things where you can have students participate through clickers, or they're trying to do hybrid classes. They're trying to do small group, team-taught approaches. They're trying to do, civic engagement, where you actually go out and see things work in the world and pull them back and understand the concepts that you're thinking about. Even thinking about, the political world and what's going on right now is just amazing. I think if you put the politics next to things like communications and theater arts and visual arts, it's just so fascinating. And social media, of how all of these things are intersecting in such interesting, completely different ways. If you think of how, let's even talk about the quote unquote the last Republican president, and the things we saw during his presidency versus the things we saw in this presidency. Yeah, two very different people, but we're even seeing it different. The information streams in continuously.
Right.
I think even back in the last Bush situation, just to grab a period of time, let's talk about 10 years ago, we got a lot of information, but nothing like now. It's just absolutely amazing. And you all as students, actually, that's one of the tasks to do, is to be able to figure out, you have to be able to take the information, decipher it, figure out which you actually believe in, if there's alternative news, and be able to figure out what the meaning for you is. And usually then you're going to take it and you're going to share it with somebody else. And so there's this very different process that goes on for students today. It is something, honestly, that faculty are very, very tested with. I think both our part-time and our full-time faculty, it's so fascinating. I'm talking to both groups of them just recently, and the part-time faculty are just as fascinating about how they can make the educational situation relevant, but still hold on to tenets and principles that we know are important for certain fields and certain disciplines, but as well know that you're going to take this and use it in the future. I mean, it actually makes being a faculty member really cool, and it's very, very challenging, because you really are trying to make something sometimes that's a little harder, but it's for the reason and purpose of you're going to run into those kinds of challenges. And the more that you can actually take a challenge, meet it, beat it, and go forward, that's what life's all about.
Do you think in maybe a near future, one of the gen ed requirements will be to take a social media class and to kind of teach students how to find facts versus non-factual stuff in social media, since that's a big part of our lives nowadays?
That is fascinating. I was trying to think of a school that's probably done something like that, and I'm sure that there are ones. I know that there are classes on social media about, even basically how social media works.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of people here who do research in that area. Hopefully they're listening, and hopefully they'll think about, hey, creating a class. Whether we put it into gen ed, gen ed is interesting because what we're really trying to do is to make it, lean and mean, but the basic building blocks about what you need to be able to do all the other courses that you do. They're the building blocks for what you need that are broad when you get into your major, which it tends to be more specific. But even within those majors, you deal with lots of other different sorts of things, but the gen ed is really the basic pieces of it. It would be fascinating to think about social media as being so critically a basic essential to what any student, anybody in a career does, that you put it as part of gen ed. And, if we're not there now, it seems like we're moving that way, that it's just a piece of it. There was this very interesting, it was, believe it or not, it was AARP that had a presentation that they did over in the College of Pharmaceuticals. Gosh, what week is this? This is Friday. It was this week. It was early this week. And the keynote speaker was talking about your image management. And she was saying, your image management. I thought it was so interesting. She made the instant assumption of that you manage your image online. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I think about doing it when I meet somebody, you do image management. But that who we are is now intertwined with all of those things that, I have a friend, and it's so fascinating. You can't find her footprint on the internet. And I said, how did you do that? And she's like, well, I don't let anybody take my picture, and I don't sign up for Facebook. I go, how do you live? She doesn't involve herself in anything that is really those mainstream things, except for you can look and find the one place where she's listed is because of where she works. She works for the government, and so it's listed there, and that's the only place where you find her. She doesn't have pictures, she doesn't have streams, she doesn't have Instagram, she doesn't have all those things. So we still have a part of our population that actually don't do impression management or image management via that. But I think for students, it's going to be tough. I'm actually a big proponent, and I think we do it in the honors program here, and maybe there's a couple of other programs that use electronic portfolios. Electronic portfolios, in my mind, are going to be part of the future of what we're going to see. Mm-hmm. Rather than seeing a stack of CVs, what you might see is even just one page, or maybe somebody has an iPad and they have a bunch of links. And right. What they do is they click on, and then they see the person, what they do, I think, at the top of many CVs, they'll say, what skills do you have? Oh, leadership and teamwork. And rather than seeing them listed as items, you will see them as actions. You will see a paper that was written on, scholarship, and you see them working with people doing, what is the thing, when you ride on the rope and you ride across a cavern or whatever, zip lining. You see the person zip lining. It's a movie. there's going to be a lot more dynamic way in which we will actually, I think, be able to see ourselves for a lot of different companies. That's already happening, but I think it's going to start happening more and more. I think, I hope that one of the things that I hope, in thinking about pushing things, is that we can embrace more and more electronic portfolios, even if nothing else, for even the user to be able to say, what is it that I learned at Wayne State University? What did I do? And you can have these collections and archives of things and saying, you don't have to just remember it, you actually can see it. You actually went through something saying, so I ziplined. What did I learn when I was zipping across that line? I learned fear. And I learned, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of heights. But maybe I learned that, I can conquer my fears. Maybe I learned that I was able to help other people and talk them down. We start really thinking about what we learn as we do not only things in the classroom, but things outside the classroom. That's one of the other things that I hope we start doing more with our students here. It's fascinating. In this building, you could see, even when I first got here, maybe during final exams you saw the place packed, but it just seems like more and more throughout the year. This is one of the places. We have much more of an on-campus presence by our students. And so what is it that we're learning? What is it that we're doing? And two, I think of as an administrator and faculty member, how can we actually capitalize on those things to be things that are learning experiences that students can use when they get their degree. That degree is supposed to be everything. It's supposed to be all the learning of all the different kinds of possible challenges that you might meet, how you network, how you make friends, how you get along together, how you study, how you decipher information. It's all those things put together. And if we can take both the curricular pieces and the co-curricular pieces and put them together, you guys are going to be able to do even better when you get out there into the quote-unquote real world. Or you can just do like I do and stay in academia, never leave school.
With the things that are outside of the classroom, you mentioned the co-curricular activities. Both of us worked in housing, and we got to see like how that works firsthand, like what is being done with students, how students are learning outside of the classroom. And my opinion on it is I think the university might benefit the students more if it does less, like in things like housing, because it's creating a social, space, I guess you could, to use the word social space, that is where they don't really have many challenges other than just going to class. And when something breaks in the housing, it gets replaced. When the water's not working, they just call someone and it gets fixed. They don't have to rely on their neighbors at all. They don't have to rely on their students. It's just all goes to the university. And do you think that students should kind of just be left to themselves at all anymore?
I think sometimes they are, but because it's so interesting. See, it's seen as a service. And I can tell you, when something goes wrong in one of those buildings, I mean, I even hear about it. DeRoy last summer, the air conditioner went out. Can you imagine being in DeRoy on the 12th floor and the air conditioning going out? You don't really care about your neighbor. You want to know who's going to fix that. So it's interesting. Even as you were talking, I was thinking, we make different transitions in our lives. I mean, going from a dorm room where you don't do those kinds of things of, making sure that the lawn is mowed or taking out the trash to the corner or whatever. But, oftentimes as you grow up, you will transition or live in different kinds of situations. And some, have more of that and some have less of that. And some people want more of that and some people want less of that. I was in North Carolina before I came here. I lived on like a 1.5 acre plot of land. Actually not there, but I lived in Pennsylvania. I had a rider mower because I had a big piece of land. Now I live on Woodward Ave, and I don't even have a balcony. I opened my window for the first time not too long ago. You'll have those challenges anyway. I mean, they'll come up anyway. What I like about the idea about students being able to live in the dorms is that you do get that social interaction. You do get the idea of people who are sharing a common interest, which is a goal towards being able to get a degree. And what you can learn from people like that, not only from people from, somebody from Troy versus somebody from, Macomb County, or I probably just overlap the two, but
Or
maybe
somewhere else
learning,
in the world, too.
maybe from learning from people that are other parts of the world, from the Middle East or maybe from China, being able to even just have a little closer interaction with folks like that, I think is invaluable, because you all as students have to understand. It's fascinating even when you think about the history of Detroit. I think a lot of times, we Detroiters thought about the world is here. I mean, everybody gets their cars from here. This is the world. Well, now it's almost diametrically opposed. Even all of those cars aren't made here. They're all around the world. We have global executives. I mean, it's kind of like global is local and local is global, of that we have to think about that all the things that we do here have not only an impact just on the three-county area, it has an impact on the world. And the better you understand that, the better you can navigate that, the better you get some experiences too. Like, I really hope students get a chance to think about trying to do a study abroad. That is one of the most important, and for most people, or many people, one of the most influential things that they do. Because what it does is it takes you out of your comfort zone. It puts you someplace where, maybe you even have taken, the Spanish class or the German class, and you know it, but you're actually seeing it in action. It is very, very different. I mean, that's why the student piece, if you're in the dorms and you get to meet somebody from a different place, you get to learn a little bit about the culture, but actually living in the culture will have an impact on you that you just will not forget. And, people say, well, why is that important? I can do that from watching a movie. It's not the same. Right. It's not the same. I've been to Germany and had to go to the train station. And a lot of the train stations do not have English. So you've got to go find somebody to help you interpret. And even seeing people that you don't necessarily think that you have things in common with, they can see that you don't know what you're doing, and they're helpful. And it's like, okay, they're just a person like me. They saw somebody having trouble, and they reached out and helped out. Wow, isn't that interesting? That people really are. There's some things that are people that are just people, and that there are good ones and bad ones everywhere you go. And having those kinds of experiences, that's another one, like we were talking about, the challenging sorts of things, to make a well-rounded person. And that, I'm telling you, from the top to the bottom, that's what we, I think, as faculty and administrators really want to have for our students. You've got to be able to have as many of the different kinds of experiences as possible, to be able to see the world, be able to see even locally what's going on. You can see what's going on in Detroit, and if you're interested at all in economics, economy, or money, pay attention to what's going on around. This is the rebuilding of a city. Much respect to people in New Orleans, but I would say, look at New Orleans. Now, it's a far more recent kind of collapse, but the collapse of New Orleans after the hurricane. There's parts of that city that are not even close to recovering. And actually, the places where there was economic poverty and disparity, it's greater now. And this is now 13 years later, and it's not getting better. So it's not just about where a city is or what a city does, but sometimes that it takes the right things and right foundation to happen. And that's what's exciting, is that, this is Detroit's university. Our students come in large part from about a 100-mile radius. Mm-hmm. Part of what's happening in terms of that rebuilding is us. And actually, that's what's happening is more and more. The city's got to rely on us. We're going to be the workforce. It's going to be that next level that's going to jump up. And so that's why folks have to get in here, get as many experiences as they can, and get out. Because the city needs you, the world needs you. And the things that you learn here, talk to anybody who's a graduate from here. They'll tell you. It actually prepares you pretty well. And so we're happy with pretty well, but we're not satisfied with pretty well. We want to try to get you to get those summer internships and going abroad and doing doing research in laboratories. All of those things that are going to help you make you a better citizen, thinker, participant in this new revitalized economy. All of those things will make it better when you have those kinds of experiences.
Do you think with the new housing the Wayne State is establishing, we'll see like lower or higher, let me think about this.
Better?
It could go one or two ways there.
Lower, higher retention rates.
It's so interesting. We have been watching the graduation rates of people who lived in the dorms versus not living in dorms. There's a bit of an advantage, but it's not as big as we think it should be.
Oh, really?
And so housing has been talking about, we have a curriculum, but we need to even spice up that curriculum, see if we can infuse more student success into it. There's a lot of exciting ideas around what we might be able to do. But it's so interesting. We can't compare ourselves to a Michigan. I mean, for the most part, they're a residential university. The students go there. It's a middle, I was going to say it's middle of nowhere. It's in Ann Arbor, and it's just Ann Arbor. I mean, you go there and you usually stay in the dorms. Here, you have people that live in all different kinds of settings. And whether it makes a difference or not, whether, so much of that is dependent on lots of different things that make so much variability. I think that's why you don't see this big benefit. But I think there is a benefit to staying on campus. It keeps you connected. It keeps you here. You don't go back to a quote-unquote normal life. You're here on campus. You're being a student, basically 100% of the time. Even if you're working, lots of students even work on campus. And so, we have you as a captive audience in a way, but it is that you're able to focus a little bit more. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I really feel for the people that end up having part-time and full-time jobs. They basically balance two different worlds. That's that world where you're working and you're usually working for somebody else and you're doing those things versus this very academic, you're trying to learn and figure things out. And it tends to be different kinds of worlds. And the person who's working full-time, they have to keep going back and forth between the two. When you live on campus, you're so blessed to be able to do so, you really get to be on campus, in person. You could even go home on the weekends or go home during, after finals are over someday. But for the most part, the rest of the time, you can be more engaged. It's just a little bit easier to be more engaged. I'm hoping that our future will bring the ability to be able to build more housing. Because we don't have to be, 27,000 students. We don't have to house 24,000 students. But if we could house 10,000 students, have a really vibrant residential community, in addition to those people that come back and forth, that live in our area and really get to benefit from us.
Yeah, it seems like there's a critical mass that, once you reach it, campus has, a very solid, campus culture and things like that.
Well, what's funny is that I feel like the campus culture has grown even without the housing growing. Now, the housing is going to grow just a little bit now, but I mean, I haven't been here a long time. It's just been my observation of that from, the spring of 2016 to the spring of 2016 to the spring of 2018. You just see, you see more student groups being more active. There's about 500 on this campus. Even on the weekends, actually. If you come here, it used to be that you saw tumbleweeds rolling down Cullen Mall. I mean, people from the 70s, 80s, and 90s will tell you, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like a job. You went during the week and then, you didn't have anything to do with it. People are doing things now on the weekends. The president has this really cool thing that it's an article that's in Inside Higher Education, and it says, I found trash on the weekend. I found trash on my campus, and that's a good thing. And it was because it was on the weekend that people are actually here doing things on the weekend. So, the kinds of things you were asking about, what should housing really be doing and things like that. I think that they're going to become more of an anchor by which people jump off and do other things. And it won't then just be the people who are in the housing, actually. It'll be people who used to come to campus, go home, but now on the weekends, this is the place that they come. This is the place when they go and do something. And it's not feeling restrictive or, feeling like, oh, all I ever do is just go to that school, but it's because that's the other part of your life. That's the co-curricular piece of it. I have loved to see the folks who are supporting our athletic teams. When I first got here, that's what I was told. Is that, well, nobody goes to the football games. Well, Dean Strauss and lots of others have said, well, we're going to change that. Let's figure out ways to make it exciting. And just this last year, we had an okay year for football, but it was a day in November when it was raining and it was chilly. And I still believe that about 3/4 of the people that came to that game at the beginning stayed through the whole game. Now, I was in the president's tent with the heaters. It was easy for me, but I was like, this is great. This is that kind of spirit. I told somebody when I came here, they were saying, we don't win enough games, and that's why people don't care. It's like, nah, you don't understand. Sports is not always just about winning and losing.
Look at the Lions.
Hey, I've been a Lions fan for a long time. They don't always win, but when they do, you're excited, and when they don't, you're pissed. That's what a fan does, okay?
Right.
Somebody who's disengaged is like, yeah, they won, so what? Let's be fans. This is a part of our culture. This is a part of our university that actually we'd be proud of. I'm always excited because our athletes actually have some of the highest graduation rates. So these are guys that, again, trying to do that balancing act. Being an athlete is like having, part-time, 3/4-time job, and you're actually doing schoolwork. But then what's even more amazing about our students, in particular our student athletes, is that they go and do community service. So we're doing all the things that are right. Everybody's got to look and pay attention and be more positive. I say this to our faculty all the time. I know what a tough time they've had for years. You know, we don't have as much investment in higher ed from the state as we used to have, and so we've had to make a lot of tough decisions, a lot of cuts. But things are going pretty well. And the other thing is that this is just a really cool place. It is a really cool place with a lot of exciting things, and we're doing a lot of things right. Wayne State and people, of course, believe that this is my job to say these sorts of things, but we're starting to be the model in different things, particularly around student success. We've had one of the highest changes in student success in the country. And people are asking, how in the world did you do it? Because everybody's trying to get better. What's funny is that as good as we're doing, our faculty, our staff, our administration, it's like, okay, we got this high. Hey, maybe we can go higher. Let's see if we can knock up another 5. What else can we do? What else do students need? What else can we prepare from not only when students get on campus, but before they get here? We're trying to do more and more through the K through 12 space. As you know, from the city of Detroit, Superintendent Vitti is really trying to shake things up and change them. We're trying to be as much of a part of that as possible. We do summer programs that bring people here and understand about how exciting it is not only do science, but they also figure out how exciting it is to be here. You see the dorms going up. The STEM building is going to go up here relatively, we're going to start on it relatively soon. It'll be done in 2020 is what the goal is. You just got to understand, this university is really on the right track, and it's doing a lot of exciting things. You guys as students being successful, I'll tell you what the thing that's fascinating is. You were asking kind of like, what should we do with or without the students? One of the things we're doing is we're watching the students, and we're listening to the students. We want to know what they're interested in, what they're excited about, what they're pursuing, and then how they're doing so that we can actually change things that capitalize on that. And so, you guys aren't our test subjects necessarily, but, when we invest in something, we're watching very closely to see if it's helping. And when it does help, we want to try to do more of that. And when it doesn't help, we try to make that shift, make that pivot, and make sure we can find things that you can actually do better with. But it's amazing. It's the co-curricular piece and the curricular piece. The gen ed reform, that's going to help the curricular piece. That's one big, big piece of it. But what also was written in there was to make new classes, to refresh them, to make them so that professors got excited again, rather than all of that, cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts. The idea that, yeah, I got cuts, but that doesn't mean I can't teach a great class. And we just had our academic recognition yesterday, and it is so cool listening to what people do. And that some of the ones are just about how professors dedicate their lives to students. We have that in our environment, and all we got to do is keep actually believing in ourselves. I'm not a Pollyanna by any stretch of imagination, but when things are going well, I'm ready to celebrate them. And things are going well at this university. If we can continue to try to get students, I think programs like yours, I hope, are reaching out to as many students as possible and trying to get them to understand the things that are going on, the things that they should be even petitioning for, the groups that they should be participating in, and what we're trying to give them as that overall package. It's so fascinating. So May 8th is graduation. To me...
We're both graduating, by the way, this May.
So what's going to happen to the show?
What's up?
What's going to happen to the show?
From our houses. It's gonna have to be satellite.
Hey, you can on the internet. You can do it anywhere. Graduation is one of it drives me nuts. I mean, we don't have as many sessions this time. Last year we had 6 in May, and so I have to repeat the same thing, only different colleges, 6 times. It's exhausting. You don't want to misspell a word because when you say it, 2,000 people are listening to it. But when I watch the students have reached that ultimate goal, man, if you're a faculty member, even if you're just a student, if you want to see some pure joy, you go to graduation. Graduation, you go, okay, you know something? It was worth it. Okay? It's hard, stressful things, tough decisions to make. But when you see people having reached their goal, and that you know that this is the first step that's just going to skyrocket them. They're going to change not only their lives, they change the lives of their families. It's the reason why it is stressful for me, because I think at graduation I honestly may talk the most. As you can see from this session, I can talk the most. But it really is it is the coolest time to see people being able to celebrate the hard work that they've done and that they've been dedicated to it. And I try not to push it too much. Our alumni person who speaks, Peter Caborn, he says, okay, so this is the beginning, and now you're going to go out there. It's like, so, you reached your goal. Okay, so now there's another goal. Another goal is to make your life better, but to go out there. But it's just great. I can't wait until next week. Not next week, the week after next. We're at Ford Field, which is gigantic. I will try not to stumble over my words, but I can't wait to see everybody cross the stage. And I will look for you guys. I'll harass you, give you the thumbs up or something like that. If I don't catch you, because I'm trying to figure out what words I'm supposed to say next, make sure you say hi as you're going across the stage.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with that, we go to our last segment of the show, which, what are our sponsors for today, Jake?
Well, we don't do sponsors on this show, Ruben. This is pro bono work.
This is pro bono, yeah, right.
A romance language expert like you should know what that means. That means for the public good.
Right.
That's what our show's all about. No sponsors. But we do have some cherry pie. We're going to slice into that right now. We'll each get a piece.
We baked it ourselves.
Yeah, right. I work at Kroger.
Here you go.
So, Ruben, how about you describe the pie? I mean, I know you have a talent for describing things like this.
Okay, well, let's start by saying it's yellow and red.
Yellow? I might
Golden?
be taking mine to go.
Smells good. I actually have a very good question, I think, for you, Provost, and it's about construction. What is going on with all this construction around campus all the time? My theory is that they're drilling for oil. It's like it's like every day I come to campus, they're at a different location around campus, and then just kind of like breaking down sidewalks. What's going on?
There's a number of different things going on. Some of it is relative to some optic fiber to be able to increase connectivity. Let's just call it basically that. I apologize, Darren Hubbard, who's our Chief Information Officer. So some of it's that. There's another section of some of the work that's being done that is to help in terms of drainage. We have some things. That's what was fascinating about the building of the Anthony Wayne Apartments, is that one of the things that had to be done first is that there was like a sewer pipe or something that ran up underneath the street, and nobody kind of knew that it was there. Mm-hmm. But once you start planning to do that, the city says, hey, guess what? You got to make sure that that pipe is actually protected, that you can be able to access it, because this is, a part that actually changes how we can move water and sewage and all of that, through the city. So that was an interesting little challenge that happened. And so there's been some of that happening. Some of that happens right across the street from my building. But I'm hoping part of what you're seeing is the very, very hard work that people have done. This is our 150th anniversary. This is also part of our capital campaign here at the university. And we're going to come to the end of it this year. Mm-hmm. And, with that, we will have, hopefully had wonderful, generous contributions to the university that will total, $750 million. It's to do all the kinds of exciting things that we're looking to do. The management of this university, it is more than managing a corporation. I mean, if you want to see somebody who is, here more than me, and that's because he lives on campus, is the president. Being able to have both the public face but also the operational face of this campus as it goes through its revitalization is just amazing, and there's so much to be able to do. There's so much to be able to consider. Mm-hmm. Midtown is now kind of like the place to be. We have lots of pieces of land, and ultimately, I believe it's going to start officially this fall. We're going to do what's called master planning. Mm-hmm. So master planning is just to say, something? You're not going to stay still. You're not going to stay static. So let's think very strategically about what you want to do, what land you want to keep, maybe what land you want to buy, what you want to build. All of those things get put into this master plan. And the master plan is designed to try to give you a direction, a strategy for 10 years. And what's amazing is that many, I think we haven't had a master plan for a little while. And it's because when it gets to the end, when it gets to 10 years, you've been so busy trying to do things, you're like, oh crap, 10 years has gone by. We got to think about what the next 10 years is going to look like.
Right.
And so, the forward-thinking, forward-facing part of the university, it's something that the president and his cabinet actually work on. We have a fantastic chief financial officer who has really been trying to guide, and under him is where some of the master planning is going to come from. The chief financial officer is Bill Decatur, and the person in facilities and planning right now is Harry Wyatt. And, just doing the plan is a huge undertaking because you really are trying to figure out, like, how much more housing do we do?
Right.
We need some more classrooms. Where do we put them? We need some more labs. What do we do with them? We need to renovate some of the buildings. Should we renovate it? Or sometimes it's better to take them down. So you do this very, very complicated analysis and to try to think about where you'll be for 10 years and even thinking about taking care of the buildings that you have. As you know, we have the Mike Ehrlich School of Business. Oh my gosh, I got a tour. It's still dusty down there, but that building is absolutely incredible. It is going to be this really cool piece of this university. But to think about it, that's from this university that, people will say, again, I love to talk to the alums who were here 20, 30 years ago. And they'll say, yeah, it was just kind of here in Midtown, but gosh, you got iBio to the north, you got Mike Ehrlich to the south. Are you guys going to beat through the whole middle part? I said, yeah, if we can kick, Michigan State, Michigan out of there, we'll have a clear path to be able to do a lot of stuff. No, we have lots of pieces, and part of that is actually shows that Wayne State has always been kind of this integral piece and integrated piece of the city. But I think having these unbelievable 21st century buildings like the Mike Ehrlich School and even the iBios building, those are ones that, as they continue to kind of fully come online, and faculty and researchers are actually using them, students are coming and being able to be taught in them. It's, you guys as soon-to-be alums, and we'll have to talk because you need to just come back to graduate school and keep staying in school. Do like I did, just don't leave. It's going to be interesting for you guys to come back in 10 years and say, oh, I remember when, we used to have our show down in the basement of the Student Center. And now look, they built, 3 stories onto the student building. Yeah, it's in the penthouse
radio station's
now.
in the penthouse now.
It was because you guys did a great job back there in 2018. It's going to be so interesting to see because you can already see stuff is in progress. And so, for example, the dorms are going to be finished in fall. Actually, what's interesting is that, so there's 2 pieces on either side of it. I'm on the Provost, so I don't know everything, but I thought those weren't even supposed to be started until the center part was done. Those things look like they're just about done. I mean, they're really starting to go up pretty fast. So things are happening fast around here. And like I said, think about it in 5 years of what this place is going to look like. It's going to be an even more exciting place.
So I have a question just to end the show. It's from Christopher Beanham. He used to go to Wayne State University.
For about 10 years he was here.
He was here about 10 years. He's asking, so I've been here for 10 years, and I never knew that the president lived on campus. Where does he live?
Oh, I'm not going to say that. Oh, no. That seems like it's like an industry secret or something like that. There's actually 2 places. The Jacob House, which was, I think that it was designed as President's House. Actually, there's a President's House that's right next to the Hillberry Theater. That was the first President's House. And so Jacob House came on some other time. I forgot what the history of it is. And there have been a couple of presidents who have lived in there. Our current president uses that for entertainment.
The whole house?
The whole house. Well, people don't get to go upstairs. It's the downstairs that is just this wonderful wood. It's this grand old house. And there's lots of things that go on there. And then his house is in another place on campus. I'm just not going to say. I mean, I'll get back to my office.
You can tell us after the show.
I was going to say, I'll tell you after the show. I'll get back to my office, and President Wilson will be waiting there saying, do you know how many people have already been ringing my doorbell?
I guess we can end on a cliffhanger like that then.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
season finale.
Where does the president live? Find out next season. End show.
We want to thank you for coming here again with your busy schedule.
Thank you guys so much. This is absolutely wonderful. And now that I can stop talking, I'm going to have some cherry pie.
Oh, yeah. All right. Goodbye, everyone.